The one thing I'll say, jokingly, is if you can figure out a way for us to be in less meetings, please let me know. It's a conversation I have with my boss a lot. It's like, man, IT's in the middle of everything, and we're asking people to bring IT in early, getting what you asked for.
You're listening to the AV Amplifier. Each week, we'll feature voices and ideas that need to be amplified in the higher education and pro AV IT communities. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. And now here's your host, Ryan Gray.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the AV Amplifier. As always, my name is Ryan Gray. I am your host. And if it is Wednesday, you know your feed has been refreshed with new content, and this Wednesday is no exception. We continue the new year 2026 with a new voice to bring to you today that I'm very excited to talk to. Somebody that, I've met and been able to chat with a couple times, but now, I got him trapped into a window on my computer. So we get a chance to learn more about him. So, Mr. Abbs, thank you so much for being with us today. Would you please introduce yourself? Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Ryan. Isaac Abbs. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Pima Community College in Tucson, Arizona.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for all that you do. So for listeners, let's start out with a little of, Pima Community College. What's entailed there? How big? What's the scale? What's the profile of that institution look like?
Absolutely. So Pima Community College has 5 campuses in the Tucson area. So we serve Southern Arizona primarily. We see about 38,000 to 40,000 unique head count on an annual basis. So pretty sizable institution. Obviously, a lot of our students transfer to the U of A or some of the other state universities. We're big on our workforce programs. We have a lot of centers of excellence, automotive, advanced manufacturing, health professions is about a year into it, culinary, and the list goes on, cybersecurity. And so I said big on the workforce, big in transfer programs, pretty sizable institution.
Very sizable institution. Yeah, lots of people coming through there, and an area of Arizona that, quite a bit younger than the area of Arizona I live in. So
Fair.
More community college students.
Yes.
Good deal. So most of the times when I talk to someone who is CIO or has that title, my first question is this, which is, why in God's name have you chosen to spend your lifetime and talent in the job of Chief Information Officer at an education institution?
Yeah, man, there's it's a multifaceted question. I'll start with why the CIO role. It's a role pretty early on in my career. I would say within the first 5 years, something that, it's a role I learned about and something I aspired to be. And so then when I went to grad school, focused efforts in those areas. So it's always something that appealed to me. I think it's really the ability to solve problems at a high level, right? And to have kind of influence on those types of decisions and be able to, I think, get people to a place they otherwise didn't believe they could get to or even think was possible. And I think that's the beauty of technology. It's kind of, it's sometimes we make things that seem impossible possible. And there's a lot of value. There's a lot of opportunity in that, right? In today's world especially, and I mean, this was always the case, but it's even more so a case today, is everything's IT. I mean, tell me something that is not IT. I mean, we're at the center of everything. That's fun and exciting. It's also why I'm on the clock pretty much 24/7, right? I mean, something is always going on. There's rarely a dull moment, let alone a dull day. So that's what brought me to the role of the CIO. Higher ed's interesting. Higher ed's something I kind of backed into about 15 years ago. I started my career in public sector, did that for the first 6.5 years of my career, and just happened to come to Pima in a director role. Fell in love with higher ed. I think the purpose of higher ed. I've been the CIO here for 3.5 years. In between roles here at the college, I went back to public sector for a bit, which I enjoyed, but what really brought me back was the purpose of the institution, right? And that's to transform lives through affordable education. There's something there that really resonates with me as a first-gen college student. And so that just opportunity to have that type of impact in our community, I think tied really my passion for the role of IT and the passion for the mission together.
No, that's a great answer, and I think shared by so many people who work in higher ed. That's what we always say is there's more money to be made in other places or other things to be done, but the why is kind of a little bit of a thing. So you mentioned being in the public sector. You mentioned working grad school. So then, if that's why you're here, what does your path to this position kind of look like in your career?
What was the path for me to this? Yeah. Okay. So, graduated from the U of A, started work at the city of Tucson, was there for, I think, 6.5 years. The last 2 years of that being my first leadership job. I was the first IT manager over the court system. And so had an opportunity to walk in and do some really cool things there. We ended up, the city was going through an IT centralization, but we were not part of that. But not being part of that meant we got kicked out of certain things. So we had to stand up our own data center for our infrastructure on site. So that was quite an interesting project. The court was going through, a big case management change. So almost think of it as ERP type implementation. So a lot of cool stuff, exciting things going on. I was much younger at the time, young in my career, but it was that, jump in and kind of create a vision, create a purpose, and drive a team towards that. And, we were quite successful in those years that I was there. Like I said, I then kind of backed into higher ed for an opportunity, a growth opportunity. I should say right leading into that first management job is when I was actively working on my master's degree. So I finished it up, I think, after my first year of that management job, and that was a master's in MIS. So I came to the college. I was the director of, at the time, what was referred to as business systems. So oversaw business analysts that were focusing primarily on finance. That role grew to the director of enterprise systems. So all the business analysts, software developers, all were under that umbrella, and then we were under IT. At that time, I knew that I wanted to be a CIO. The seat was filled here, and at the time appeared that it was going to be filled for a while. And so that's what got me to jump back to public sector as the CIO equivalent, the technology services director at the town of Marana, which is a suburb of Tucson, a much smaller organization, which I will tell people that opportunity paved the way for this opportunity. I mean, I was hands-on on everything, even areas. I'm a software developer. That's my background in the IT world. But, there I was very heavily involved in building our first security program, cutting over to new infrastructure, networking, right? Kind of had to be a little involved in everything, which, gave me a little more breadth across. And so when the job became available here and people had reached out, I thought that the timing was right, the opportunity was right. I knew the institution. I had much more experience than I had when I left. And so the beauty of, the boomerang effect is I got to hit the ground running. The downside is people expected me to hit the ground running, and people reached out and said, hey, remember that thing we were working on 3.5 years ago? We're still working on it. But that was my path, right? Incremental leadership opportunities, not afraid to leave in an organization to get that opportunity, right? The further you go up, the fewer the positions there are. And so sometimes you do have to leave to get that experience.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story, because that can be a challenge for people where they're at a place they like, but because of that sort of pyramid thing, there you can run into that. But the number of people that have stories like that, which is, I had to jump to another place. Absolutely. I took a higher position at a smaller place, picked up the experience, and then I was the no-brainer candidate, or I was really more prepared when I came back.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. So the role of CIO, I think there's I'll put it a couple ways. I think there's everyone in institution, I think, reserves the right to think of it however they want to think of it, and it's usually what they need it or want it to be. But especially in higher ed, I still think when you talk to them, there's still a spectrum between the role of CIO at a college or university, and depending on the side, of being like the technology leader, right? The czar of all things technical, and all the way to CIOs that may not have even come through an IT organization, and they're an executive vice president reporting to the president, you know what I'm saying, and have IT under them. So it's really more of a, an executive role versus a technical role. How do you see that balance? Where would you say you are? Where do you think, I love to ask like 3 questions all packed into one, but where would you think the sweet spot is for that person that's got the tag, regardless of what other titles they have, that tag of Chief Information Officer?
Yeah, I have a strong opinion on this one.
All right.
I think you have to be both. And I don't know if I necessarily would lean and say it's more of this one and less of this one. I would say it has to be a pretty strong blend of both. I get there's a lot of CIOs that are no longer technical, no longer hands-on, or may never have been. I think that's it's not what I think a CIO should be, and I'll tell you why. I believe in kind of leading from the front, right? Kind of let's go the Alexander the Great mentality. I'll go fight the fight with you. I'll get on the battlefield with you. If I'm going to do that, I need to be able to do that, right? That does not mean I am a technical expert in every area. Far from it. But I know enough to have a conversation. I know enough that I'm willing to get my hands dirty, right? Over the winter break, we moved data centers. I was there pushing racks and helping move. Now, I wasn't the person doing every little thing, but I was there, right? And I think it's important to be there, right? There's credibility and trust you gain from your team when you have those abilities. So I think it's extremely important. But equally important, and you could argue a little bit, maybe even more so needed, is that ability, right? And what do I mean from that? The ability to create a vision, a strategy, and lead a team towards it. The ability to communicate the why across the organization. We make more change across this institution than any other unit, and it can be disruptive. And we just came off a year where we have done a ton, and a lot of it was disruptive. The only way you can do that and keep your job is to be able to communicate the why and the importance and let people know it's going to be okay in the end. But a lot of that is through communication, and those are human skills, right? Not technical skills. And so there is a blend, but it is a blend. In my opinion. Sure. Yeah.
I love it. And I share a lot of that, which is there's always there's a core tenet of leadership, I think, that is I would never ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't
100%.
do. And there is a place and time where you have to be fluent, or you have to, even though you need to speak certain languages, even if you're not the expert in it, to really be able to understand. So to that point, then, in your role as CIO, what's your balance look like in terms of your time and attention that is turned towards the people and the parts of your organization versus the people up and out, where you're spending your time thinking about and working on managing upwards, managing outwards communication, and how does that flex, over time?
Yeah, it's a horrible balance. It's not well balanced, I guess is what I would say. The up and out, right? I know that my role should and is a public facing role. So where I can, I try to make myself available, right? I'm sitting here with a podcast for you today. I'll be on another one on Friday. When people ask me to speak, come talk to their groups. I'm talking to, our workforce team on Friday about our ERP migration. Like, these are things I try to make myself available. Obviously, in this role, I spend a ton of time in meetings, way too much time in meetings. Outside of meetings, it's trying to squeeze in my job, and then it's trying to squeeze in the technical things at times that I find myself involved in. Where I'm trying to get better at striking a balance is when I get involved and take something on, how do I shift that off, right? Because we had a few bumps in the road getting this started because I was running in and out with something that I kind of become the center of, which is not ideal. And so I need to be better at having probably a better balance of less day-to-day hands-on, the Doesn't mean I can't get involved and help answer questions and do things, but there's times where I have to be able to shift that off to the people who should and have the time to do it. But overall, I think it's an okay balance. It can be a better balance. The one thing I'll say, jokingly, is if you can figure out a way for us to be in less meetings, please let me know. It's a conversation I have with my boss a lot. It's like, man, and it's, and I look at the calendar and it's, once again, if IT's in the middle of everything and we're asking people to bring IT in early, you right, it's kind of you're getting what you asked for. So it's tough. I mean, it's tough. I do try to not take work home with me more than I need to. Of course, I'll answer emails, the occasional phone call when it comes up, but I try not to sit down at the keyboard and do like hands-on work. Because I have to balance. I have, 2 young children, and so a wife, and so I have to keep some sense of a healthy balance, or I'm going to burn myself out.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of jobs in the current economy, but definitely CIO, your job, they can be all encompassing. They will take everything you're willing to give
100%.
them.
I think that's a great way to put it. Everything I'm willing to give, they will take 100%.
Yep. 100%. And I was one of the conversations that comes up every once in a while is as a, coming from, and I know that you're younger than me. We don't need to discuss how much younger, but
probably not as much as you think, but
I know, but growing up in a generation that was like, so you can go out and play once you finish your chores. You can watch TV once you finish your homework. And now we live in a world where the work is never done. You know what I'm saying? There is no way to get to, I'm caught up.
Yeah.
Therefore, we can't actually ever relax. We can't ever actually let ourselves do that. So just as an aside, real quick, how you said, I don't like to take it home. How do you try and strike that balance?
That's
in a job that would take everything
the
you would
biggest thing
give?
I try to do is not sit down and do actual hands-on keyboard work. Now, I'll hands-on phone work, right? I'll answer an email and stuff like that. Now, if there's an emergency and something has to get done, that's different.
Right.
But that's where I really try to strike the balance. My wife would tell you I probably have a horrible balance, but for me, I feel it's pretty good because I'm not going in the other room to do stuff, right? I'm there with them. I'm present. I'm playing with the girls, doing that kind of stuff. But really, can I go anywhere without this? No, because I'm a text and a phone call away from an emergency, right? It's a couple of years ago, we rented a cabin up in Williams, Arizona, and for the first night, the internet didn't work. That was like, I keep going back to that moment because, right, I was disconnected and it was awesome, right? Or if I'm traveling and I'm 30,000 feet in the air, I'm disconnected. Like, there's this weird sense of like, it doesn't matter what's going down below. There's not anything I can do. Those are the moments I really cherish because I don't get a lot of those. Right.
I totally understand.
Yeah. So it's hard. It is a really difficult job to strike a balance with. I think it can be a very difficult job to have a family, especially a young one. But there's benefits that come with it also. Right. And so just like anything, it's just trying to find the balance that works for you and your family or the people around you who depend on you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think probably the first time we met, I can't remember exactly, was at a regional conference that we had here at Yavapai College a couple of years ago, which you guys hosted this year. And it was, for our listeners here, it was directly after InfoComm. I flew straight from InfoComm to there and had COVID when I landed. So I sat in a hotel room for 2 days and went home, and I didn't get to do it. But you're hosting again next year.
You're
so
hosting
we're very
again.
excited about that.
Yes.
But at that event, one of the things that's been done is the Stump the CIO panel, which is always fun. And I think one of the questions that I put in for you guys that year was, what is something about your role as a CIO that like you wish your team knew or understood, but isn't the sort of thing that you would share? What do people need to know about being a CIO that they kind of don't really understand?
I'm going to say something and they're going to be like, but you just said the true job, not necessarily how I always operate, but the true job is so much more about people than technology. Like that, I'll tell everybody, I'm in the people business way more than I'm in the technology business. And I just told you, I'm very hands-on. I can be hands-on. I'll get hands-on. I get too hands-on. but I'm in the people business. And as much as technology is at the center of everything, these jobs are very much people centered, right? And it's, once again, it's that public face and being comfortable and willing to have conversations and speak with people. And we had this conversation. We were sitting at a bar in Phoenix, and you tried to tell me I was an extrovert, and I'm like, I'm not. Like, far from it. Those who know me very, very well know I'm not. I've had to get comfortable being uncomfortable in this role, doing these types of things, right? These are, this kind of engagement does not energize me. Like, once I'm done, I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, it took everything out of me, right? But if you want this role, that is the role today, right? The role of the CIO today is not sit behind and wait for people. It is the technology leader. It is, in a lot of ways, I find this role pushing and leading the organization in all kinds of areas that otherwise wouldn't have been done, right? I mean, like I said, we've just finished up a pretty big 5-year massive digital transformation where everything has been transformed. And we're at the point now, and over the last, couple of years, where it's been at the application, right? It's been business applications, and it's IT saying like, hey, like, there's an opportunity here that, we have product A, but product B can do so much more. I've learned about product B at this event. I've talked to product B. Let's have a conversation and see if product B works for the organization, right? That is not how this role used to be. It used to be, hey, look what I went and bought, IT, help me implement. And then it's all clunky and doesn't work. And 2 years later, it's not what they thought it would be. And so we've had to work a lot to flip that narrative. But that is, a lot of times, my role being out there and being engaged and being willing to have conversations and talk to people and learn things.
I love, so to that point, you're right. Like that idea that, the CIO needs to be someone steering the organization, not just someone taking orders. And you're right. That's a huge flip. You've talked about the importance of trust and things like that. How else do you go about, or what's your advice for people to get invited to that table of decision-making and guidance rather than just receiving orders and being expected to execute on them?
So if you're not out there, it's never going to happen, right? Once again, I recognize that my role is the face of IT, right? So we send out a quarterly newsletter that goes out, message from the CIO, hey, this is what we're doing at high level. We have a strategic plan we make available, right? We are as transparent as we can be. We try to communicate as much as we can, never enough, never good enough. But the bottom line is, what I have learned is there's never too much communication. And I'm going to read, it's on my board here. Trust drips in and pours out, right? You have to build up trust through wins because you have your losses. And when you have your losses, right, you don't want the bucket to go empty, but it's going to pour. It's not going to drip. And so, I'm happy to say I think we've built up a lot of trust through this, through communication, through having conversations with people. I try to be overly responsive, right? So once again, I don't get on my keyboard at home, but I'll respond to emails, and I'll have faculty email me on the weekend. Hey, I have this question. I have this problem. I have this. I have that. I try, responsive. I respond right away as much as I can because that builds relationships. Relationships lead to communication, which lead to, hey, wait a minute, we should probably call Isaac and have Isaac. Now, that also leads to, I'm going to call Isaac more for everything, right? More meetings and more like, well, that's really not an IT thing. But, I love the fact that people feel that all levels of this organization feel comfortable reaching out to me directly, right? I do not send messages from an inbox that says CIO@pima.edu. I have an inbox but I don't even use it because I think it's important for there to be a human face, not just a position.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Sorry, you see somebody looking in the window at me also around here.
I get it.
As one more follow-up on the thing here, which is, it's now pretty standard for what used to be called audiovisual, to fall under IT, which melds with a lot of classroom, melds with ed tech, pedagogical things and all that sort of thing. What do you, when you think about that unit in your organization, what is it that you need from them? How, when you look at your audiovisual group, what do you expect from them, and what do people working in those groups, maybe for a CIO that, that are less familiar with or didn't come from those areas, how can they think about working with their CIO from an AV standpoint?
So our team will tell you, I think pretty straightforward, the easy button. It has to be easy and usable. I think this is a space where it is easy to have technology for the sake of technology. And especially coming out of the pandemic, right? All these rooms that could do all this stuff, and faculty would use 10% of it. And so we're actually, part of our strategic plan is, right sizing classroom technology. I think one thing I loved when we were at the conference at Yavapai, I went back and was like, hey, guess what Yavapai doesn't have? A smart board in every room. Like I think we can do this differently. Some classrooms may need it, but not all need it. How do we right size the budget and right size the experience? So right size and easy, a faculty member has to be, or a staff member going to a conference room has to walk into the space and be able to use it without reading a manual. They need it to just work. And, the opportunity this position provides is I've had a chance to go to various different tech companies, right, in Silicon Valley, and sit in meetings where I'm like, it can just work. Trust me. I sat in a room.
I've seen it.
Came and presented in and day out. Nobody had to plug anything into their device. Nobody was fumbling around. It just worked. And so really getting to a place where I think we can leverage probably more of the software side of AV than the hardware to make and create a easier to use experience.
Nice. What is something that, in your guys' world with your AV, what are you guys working on? Like, what are you excited about in terms of your, like you said, digital transformation in that area and your sort of roadmap forward?
Yeah, on the AV side, in the conference rooms, it's our move to Zoom rooms, right? It's moving away from the I got to plug in a USB. I have this huge rack of equipment in the room to run the room, to more of the Zoom room experience, right? I come in the room, I remotely connect my device. You can cast, I can cast, we can have people remote, and it's very simple and easy to use. That's what I'm excited about in the conference room space, because our conference rooms today, though they're well built, I'm going to argue they're overly built and they're complicated. In the classroom spaces, as I mentioned, getting to that kind of tiered model where 85% of our classes are tier 1, and then maybe some tier 2 and some tier 3, right? Where the classroom experience is also easier, less complicated. We're once again, something I learned from you all, that we are in our early stages of moving to AV over IP, right? Once again, use more of the software aspect, move the hardware out of the room, create a easier to manage experience. And once again, I should, as a faculty member, come to the classroom, one button push, boom, 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 I'm good to go. Not do this, do that, slide this, right? Tap this 3 times kind of deal. So those are the things I'm really excited about, because I think the opportunity to engage more and work more with faculty on what they want as an experience. How do you build trust? You work with people, right? I don't give you something. I ask you what you want, and we work together to put something that will work for you. I think as we evolve in that area, those are the things I'm really excited about.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of people on that journey of sort of standardization.
100%.
That a standardization that doesn't minimize capability. It maximizes capability with ease of use out there.
Exactly,
and
right.
that sort of ability that AV can move into this same paradigm that other sort of enterprise IT systems have been in.
Right, and getting back to kind of, why do I love this role, right? The ability to make things that make things possible that seem impossible. And I think to that point of AV, it can be easy, right? It might be complicated as all get out under the hood, but to the end user, it's push a button and it's easy. That's the beauty of it. Yeah.
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, a half hour goes so fast, Isaac. Thank you so much for this conversation, because I love talking to you and being able to pick the brain of people that are seeing the world, from their institution's lens, and trying to develop things forward. So if people wanted to, follow you, learn more about you, learn more about what Pima has going on, where would they go?
Yeah, LinkedIn. That's where I'm at. Isaac Abbs. Should be. I think it's Isaac-Abbs on my LinkedIn, and that's where I'm at. So.
Cool. Well, we will link that in there for everybody.
Okay,
Give
perfect.
Isaac a follow, and like I said, I think probably a lot of career to go. It'll be fun to watch what all
Still have some
where
distance.
all you end up.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
What all you end up doing. So,
Oh, thanks,
cool.
Ryan.
Thank you
Appreciate
so much for your
Thank you.
time today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the AVIT Amplifier. Tune in next week for more with today's guest. It'll be great or your money back. Your host has been Ryan Gray. He's on the tweeters at Ryan_A_Gray, or find him on LinkedIn to connect. Please subscribe and give the show a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. This show is brought to you by higheredav.com. The views expressed here are not necessarily those of our respective institutions, employers, or sponsors. Everyone hang in there, go easy, and we'll be back next week.